Hare Krishna. Continuing on with our series of 50 years in ISKCON. This is part number 35, and we are now talking about the time frame between 2020 and 2024. So we're finishing this up. Not today, but it's coming. Let me offer my prayers first. Ma Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Vistaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Vicharne Nivishesha Shunyavadi Paskacha Desatarne Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sarigora Bhakta Vrinda Vanchakapatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. There's a nice verse just popped into my mind. What I say during my puja in the morning, Katanchana smrite yasmin duskaram sukaram bhavet vismrite viparitam syat Shri Chaitanya namamritam. I chant this like all the time because it means things that are difficult become easy by remembering Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and things that are easy, they become difficult when we're not remembering him. So that's a verse that I really like to keep in the forefront of my mind. All right, so why don't we begin? In my last talk, we were discussing the COVID crisis, which took us through 2020, 2021. And that's pretty much what was going on in that time, so there's not a whole lot else to talk about. But, you know, after some time, it was definitely getting a bit boring as the months were rolling by. And so it was a very pleasant surprise and a wonderful day when I got an unexpected call from Andrew Maharaj. I think it was September 21, but you know, those years, I'm worse at remembering short-term than long-term. Anyway, not so important. It's around that time, 21, September 21, I think. And he was excited about an idea he had for a new project. And I've known Andrew Swami since the very first day he came to the temple, and he has always been, from day one, a very active person. So I kind of had been wondering, how is he dealing with this COVID thing, you know, being stuck in one place for the first time in, 50 years. And but I wasn't surprised to hear that he had figured out other ways to stay active and enlivened in service during this time. Some people were not able to do that, but anyway, he was taking it as a great opportunity rather than a bummer to do something that he usually didn't have time to do, because he was so busy traveling and preaching. And so that was, studying and reading. And he just, had always wanted to, but didn't have a lot of time for that. So he had been diving into that, and he started recording classes and uploading them 3 times a week. And, because this is all new, amazing ways to share Krishna consciousness. Doing these things like what I'm doing now, this is like, whoa, a new thing. But why he was calling me, what he was most excited about, was that he'd been regularly visiting the Vrindavan Research Institute. Now, somehow they allowed that during COVID. You know, it was like, I don't know how it happened, just Krishna's grace. But for those of you who don't know what the Vrindavan Research Institute is, I'll just say a little bit. It's a government-approved research center that was founded in 1968. And the prime objective is to collect and preserve and to study and to publish old manuscripts, as well as to display other archival material and artifacts. They had like a little museum there. And you know, they provide research facilities for scholars, and they organize exhibitions and workshops. And you know, it's an effort to preserve the traditional heritage, especially of the Braj culture. So, but the heart of the Institute, and what was most interesting to us, of course, is the manuscripts library, where they have like over 30,000 manuscripts in many languages and covering vast subjects. But of course, many, many Gaudiya manuscripts and historical documents and originals or copies of our previous acharyas' writings, you know, Rupa, Sanatan, Jiva Goswami. So, you know, you can see how this would be an exciting thing to explore, to have those doors open to us. You know, but the Institute, I remember in the 70s, I remember driving by there on a rickshaw. It used to be in Loy Bazaar above the bank. And I remember there's a little sign there, and I think, I wonder what that is, you know, but I never went up. And then in 1985, they moved just down the road from the Krishna Balaram Mandir to a beautiful, you know, 3-4 acre property. And so doing my deity service, I used to, you know, pass by there, you know, regularly. And, you know, I had this feeling when I was going by, as if I was going by a temple, that maybe I should offer my respects. It's just kind of a thing, you know, driving down the road. And, you know, and I was wondering, you know, what all is in there, you know. And eventually I did go in, and, you know, I saw a few things that were really wonderful. But, you know, they really weren't very friendly at that time. They weren't real open to the devotees for one reason or another. And, but by this time, so anyway, Maharaj had been visiting there, and he'd been learning all about the Institute and exploring all these old Gaudiya manuscripts. And he had the help of one of his disciples who had a personal relationship with the staff there, and who was also a Sanskrit student. And so he had been, you know, together they'd been translating, you know, all these bits of nectar that they were coming across. And Maharaj has gotten really immersed in this. And naturally, as is his nature, he wanted to share that with the devotees worldwide. So this became a real meditative work that he was, you know, just diving into and sharing online. But now that Maharaj, he had been going regularly, and he was building friendly relationships with some of the staff, and he began to see that, you know, there was so much that needed to be done. He started to worry about the safety of these manuscripts. I mean, you could see even, you know, the electricals are like bad, you know. You know, and he started to think, you know, there's so much that needed to be done to improve these like library conditions and, you know, these systems for preservation. You know, there was a lot that it just didn't look good. And he began to feel really strongly that he should try to do something to help protect these most priceless and important documents. Of course, there's so many other documents there that we don't have that much interest in, but nevertheless, there are treasures there, you know. So this is what he was calling me about. He wanted me to come to Vrindavan and join his small team to try to figure out what could we do, you know, come up with a proposal of how we could help. Now, you know, make things better. And so why he asked me, it's just sheer mercy is all I can say, because I have no academic or professional knowledge of the care for manuscripts, you know. But he did know that I am interested, very interested in Vaishnava history and all the things related to that. So, you know, he just said, come on, just jump on a plane and come. You know, this is going to be great, you know, and you know, he's Mr. Enthusiastic, you know, you really can't say no, you know, and I didn't really want to. It was very exciting. It was a little bit scary now to come out from, you know, from our homes to get on a plane. I mean, there was all these restrictions. We had to put on this like mask, big thing, you know, and we had to wear, I mean, it was crazy, you know. But anyway, we took the plane, and you know, we've been locked down for so long, so it was great. We're out, we're free, and I knew this was an opportunity. It's just too good to pass up. So now, previously, many talks ago, I explained about how my husband was involved in forming the Bhaktivedanta Research Center in Calcutta, the BRC. And, you know, I talked about how important this work was to Srila Prabhupada. And, you know, so basically the VRI was doing pretty much similar things as what the BRC was set up to do. So now I'm choosing to talk about this topic again because I think it's something that especially the next generation should be aware of, the importance of caring for our history. You know, what a big responsibility this is. You know, over the years, not so many devotees have been involved or, you know, shown a real interest or concern about this kind of work, but it is extremely important to understand, you know, the tremendous scholarly heritage to which we are all the heirs to this treasure. So, you know, and as I speak, thousands of manuscripts are sitting, rotting in almirahs and temples and homes all throughout Braj and other places around India. And, you know, because people know they have something valuable. They don't really know the value of it. They don't know how to take care of it. They don't know what to do with this stuff. But pretty soon it's just all going to be disintegrated. And, you know, the younger generation of Indians, you know, for the most part, they're not interested. So, you know, now there's still time to do a lot that needs to be done, you know. I mean, fortunately, in the last few years, there seems to be more and more awareness of the urgent need to do these things and to know what needs to be done. And there are various projects that are now developing along these lines, like Madhavananda Prabhu. He's very much, you know, he understands the importance of this, and he's starting like a similar, the research center in Calcutta, he's starting one in Orissa. I think it's called Gora, G-O-R-A, the Gaudiya Odia, or Orissa, Odia I think they say. Gaudiya Odia Research Association. It's a cool name, Gora. And anyway, there are others, and there seems to be more and more devotees getting involved with Vaishnava scholarship. A lot is happening in Harvard University. And, you know, all of these things are incredibly important. You know, service to the literary contributions of the previous acharyas, you know, is a major area of devotional service that just should not be neglected. And there is practically unlimited work to be done. So I'm putting it out there. If, you know, there must be some younger generations that, you know, it sounds like an interesting thing to do. So anyway, for me, to now have a chance to be directly involved in this important work, it was a very exciting prospect. You know, a new service, a new adventure. And so, you know, when I arrived in Vrindavan, we went almost immediately to the VRI. And, you know, we started really studying everything that was going on there, everything. We looked at all of their facilities. And there is a husband and wife team that oversee the Institute. And they are really wonderful, wonderful scholars and wonderful devotees. And they're well aware that there was a lot that really could be improved. So they're open and they were enthusiastic, you know, to get to know us and to try to, you know, see what could we do. So although, you know, we're all inexperienced, but even to our inexperienced eyes, it was obvious that there was so much that could be improved to really protect the documents and preserve them, and so many other things, research, translations, scanning, you know, so much. So Indradyumna Maharaj expected me, you know, he was just doing the nectar, and he expected me to deep dive into the project and, you know, to try to come up with some clear proposal of what we could do to help. So I threw myself into, you know, crash courses on everything to do with best practices for preservation, storage, cataloging, digitization, you know, everything related. You know, and of course, you know, the first thing we needed was to find consultants who could help us to evaluate, you know, the electricals, the climate control, the storage, everything. So we spent weeks on this, you know, consulting with experts to determine, you know, what is the safest situation for the manuscripts, you know, so there would be no fire hazard, because there definitely was, we could see. What the ideal environment and the space to keep them in, how to streamline, you know, the processes for scanning and preservation. And, you know, so eventually we came up with a very ambitious and very costly plan to propose. And Maharaj was just so into it. You know, I had no idea where this is going to go, but all I knew is it was a great opportunity. And, you know, you just have to, when someone has enthusiasm and drive, and he has the ability to actually get things done. I don't have that ability, you know, so you have to link up with those people who have some Shakti, you know, so being linked up with him was very advantageous. You know, I thought, well, maybe this is possible, you know. So we dubbed our project the Shastra Seva, and we proposed that it operate under the direction of Indradyumna Swami in collaboration with the VRI, and that we would provide all the funds to make all of these recommended changes. So, you know, just to give you an idea of what we were proposing, you know, basically there were three components: that protection and preservation and research. So, for protection, we were recommending how to upgrade the electrical equipment, the best systems for the temperature control, and the biggest thing that we were proposing, all of these are very big things and big changes to this place, was that after a lot of looking at things, that we needed a bigger space, and we actually were suggesting that a whole new location in the new wing and new shelving and everything, and it was a lot to figure out and a lot to present. But anyway, then for preservation, we wanted the first priority to be to identify, those manuscripts, particularly the Gaudiya works that were in urgent need of preservation, and to upgrade the scanning, basically buy all new scanning equipment and create a team that could scan all of the Gaudiya works. And, for researching, we wanted to first digitize. They had these catalogs. They're like ancient, falling apart hard copies, catalogs that who knows when the last they were updated. So we wanted to digitize this and we wanted to identify unpublished works that could be translated, and there's many things that were just very interesting that we'd like to see translated, and to identify all the originals, for priority conservation and also for displaying how to do that, so many things, So anyway, each one of this was a huge work, and it would make a lot of, mega changes to the VRI. And it was all good ideas, there's no doubt about it. And Andrew Dumars really wanted to do this. And he's just a man of action, and he felt confident that he could rally forces and support from around the world to get, the funds required, which he was already, just mentioning it, and so many devotees were like, yeah, people were enthusiastic. And so we had to have meetings with this governing council of the VRI, which included, eminent scholars and some of the Goswamis, who are the guardians of the various temples, and, the people in charge, the president, and whatever. So it was a bit scary for me. I have to get up there in front of all these people and make a PowerPoint presentation as if I know what I'm talking about. But, you have to do it when you're asked to do things, It's nice to, rise to a challenge, and it was certainly way beyond my comfort zone. But, it went really well. It was very well received for the most part. But, for some of these people, this is just their job. They don't have, the bhava. They don't have the same interests, that we do. It's just their job. And and most of them haven't had much interaction with ISKCON devotees. So, naturally, some of them were really puzzled as to why, and suspicious maybe, why do we want to do this? What is our agenda? Why would we invest so much money? Because, from a materialistic point of view, no, it doesn't make sense. So, I think for some of them, it may have been a little hard to trust that we didn't have any ulterior motive. But anyway, to make quite a long story short, no one ever said a flat no to our proposal. But it's kind of a way things are done in India. They don't want to say clearly and directly. So they just drag things on and on and on without any kind of firm decision. And in time, it was kind of a good thing it dragged on, because in time it became clear to us that, you know, we could see that we needed to abandon this project. We saw that it would, how extremely difficult it would be for them to actually accept our help, to make all these kind of changes. Many of them, you know, the people that work in there, they don't care. They don't want to do all this stuff. It would be a lot of work. But some of them really wanted it, you know. But we could see it would also be very difficult for us to follow through, to work with them, to carry this out. You know, ultimately, this is, you know, a government-run place. And so the complexities of dealing with their structure, their policies, and their politics, well, it just wasn't going to happen. It just wasn't going to happen. And, you know, interestingly, I don't think any of us really felt disheartened by it or discouraged, because, you know, there were just many positive things had come out of it. And, you know, we did actually manage to digitize a Godia catalog, which I think will be useful for scholars. And we made interesting and rewarding relationships with many important people that we would never have met were we not doing this project. And we also had some very enlivening programs. When the Minister of Culture of all of India came to visit the VRI, Indradyumna Swami volunteered. I'll arrange a festival for this, you know. So you know how he does this. He just pulls in all these like talented young people, and they put on this fabulous show that, you know, the minister loved it, and he loved Maharaj, and that opened a door to, you know, further discussions. And we did another similar program at the home of the descendants of Raghunath Bhatta Goswami. So we opened some doors that, you know, had been closed previously. So it wasn't all lost. We didn't feel. But, you know, I think for our little team, I think the most rewarding part of this adventure was the appreciation we gained for our previous acharyas and the astounding work that they did. You know, just to see those manuscripts, to read them, to see the handwriting of Jiva Goswami, of Rupa Goswami. You know, Lord Chaitanya said, this writing of Rupa Goswami, it's like rows of pearls. And you just see that. It's a real thing. It's there. You hold it in your own hand. And it's just amazing. And it makes what they did really come to life. Because when you actually think about it, it's almost impossible to comprehend how on earth those Goswamis were sitting in a forest of Vrindavan when there was almost nothing there, and writing these manuscripts. I mean, think about just the practical aspects of that, apart from, you know, the scholarship required and the brain and the bhava. Apart from that, it's just think of the complexities, you know. We found one manuscript which explains how to, you know, how to prepare, you know, the leaves upon, you know, palm leaves and other types of materials they used, you know, to write on. And that's not some easy thing. That's not just like, oh, pick me a leaf off the tree. And then we read about how they had to make the ink. And, you know, they had to get a particular water in a certain place. And I mean, you know, it was difficult, you know, and yet, you know, it was done so expertly that these manuscripts are lasting hundreds of years. The ink is still very strong on most of them. And it's just a marvel to consider how this was done. You know, how did they gather? You know, they had to have research material. How did they gather it? Where did they keep it? I mean, you know, to meditate on this, it helps us to be grateful, you know, to not take for granted what they did for us, you know, for the world. I mean, nowadays, you know, everything's just so cheap and quick and easy. You know, it's hard to imagine, you know, having the kind of drive and commitment that such personalities had, you know, to be in a forest doing these things, you know. You know, the Vrindavan Research Institute, its motto is, it's very nice, it's Granth Prabhu Vigraha. And, you know, basically it means these books are deities. And, you know, and it means that, you know, they're even more important than temples, in a sense, because the knowledge within these books informs us why we even have temples. So, you know, they are truly invaluable treasures because they contain the personal realizations, the emotions, the bhava, the realized expressions of love from the heart of the greatest personalities that have walked the earth. So, you know, sitting in the forest of Braj, they, you know, made heroic attempts to give light and hope and direction to this misguided world. And they opened the doors to Sri Vrindavan Dham, to the entire world. And, you know, I wonder, you know, could they even imagine that in the future, millions of those books in hundreds of languages would be circulated all over the world? I wonder, could they even imagine that that would happen? You know, because it is miraculous. And although we always find things to complain about, we should see the miracles, you know, that I think it's practically impossible to comprehend the value and the magnitude of what they did and who they are and what are these gifts that they've given us, you know. But if we put our minds to just meditating on it a bit, you know, at least, you know, we should really have a sense of gratitude. So, you know, to have had this tiny opportunity to at least try to take care of these treasures, well, I just felt it was like a great honor. Even just the intention to do so felt purifying, you know. So, I mean, I do feel sorry we couldn't execute our plan, but, you know, hopefully it'll happen in some other way. And we have seen some very positive effects in that regard. So it didn't turn out as we hoped, but as we always like to say, there's no loss or diminution on this path. And that is really the beauty of bhakti. You know, we just try. We tried our best, and Krishna knows. And it simply wasn't meant to be. But I think one thing Andradumna Swami, he showed us, is that it's never a mistake to shoot for the rhino. You know, Srila Prabhupada would like to say that, and he'd like to do that. and, try for something that's impossible, and then, people will say, wow, they did the impossible, and if they didn't do it, then they'd say, well, it couldn't really be done. But the thing is Prabhupada tried so many things that were not successful, but it never discouraged him. He just tried another way and then tried another way throughout entire life until it happened. So anyway, I've spent quite a long time talking about this, just because to bring more awareness to this huge responsibility that future generations have to care for our history. So, to keep it alive in every way possible. So, yeah, I talked quite a while about that, but it is important, and I'm just pulling out, trying to emphasize things that I think are important, to talk about. But anyway, moving on, I want to mention in this 2020, 2021, around this time, I want to mention 2 books that came out during this time. Because again, I'm bringing this up because I think they're very important for all devotees. Because they document the history of Srila Prabhupada's female disciples. So the first book, the first one is called The Emergence of Women's Voices. And this is a compilation. It's a collection of letters, articles, papers, and conference reports from 1988 to 2020. And it is a written documentary of the voices of the first generation pioneer women in ISKCON. It shows, the evolution of, the challenges and discussions and issues through the years, which it's just relevant, especially for future generations to be aware of. And we have Pranadadasi to really thank for, it was a very hard work that she took on her own to bring all of this important information together in one place. So should be very, very grateful to her for that. And the second book is called A Bond of Love, Srila Prabhupada and His Daughters. Now, initially this was Malati's idea, that we should gather the memories of Srila Prabhupada's female disciples. And it turned out to be quite a big project and took a number of years. I'm not sure how long, but it was a big work to interview, to record hundreds of female disciples and to transcribe those talks and edit them and eventually put together a 600-page book that shares the stories of over 300 of Prabhupada's female disciples, describing, how they came to Krishna consciousness and their interactions with Srila Prabhupada and the impact he had on their lives. And it's just filled with interesting, enlightening stories. And to be honest, I was surprised at how touching and how moving these accounts are. I really felt humbled to hear of the deep love that so many women have for Srila Prabhupada and deep realizations and the profound, very profound commitment and the reciprocation they felt in even a very brief moment with Srila Prabhupada. And also the very profound relationships they developed through distributing and reading his books. So these are not ordinary stories of ordinary women, really. And in some ways it's repetitive, but that just stands to confirm that what they're saying is so true. Again and again, you hear similar realizations and experiences of the power of Srila Prabhupada's glance and the power of reading his books and of book distribution and the reasons that they stayed in Krishna consciousness. Because I think it's fairly well known that many women had some rough experiences through their years in Krishna consciousness. Sometimes I've even heard people say, well, why did you women stay if you weren't being treated nicely? And, So this book, it answers that question very clearly. And I'm going to take the time. I was flipping through the book and I decided, well, I really want to read just a few sections just to give you a taste of it. Because, well, I don't know how many people are going to read this book. There's so many books out nowadays. And I haven't seen it around that much. And I suspect that more women than men will read it. Although I think the men devotees, they could really learn a lot from reading this, hearing from these ladies. Many of them who hardly had any personal association at all. And some of them so young, 14, 16 years old, 18 years old. And yet their devotion is so exemplary and has carried them through an entire lifetime. So, I'm going to do that. I'm going to read a bit now. And just a few excerpts. I just think it's really beautiful. Now, one of the topics that comes up just repeatedly is the power of Srila Prabhupada's glance, and the power of just being in his presence, or just a little look at you. So this is from Nanda Dasi, a wonderful god sister. So I'll read this. Let me just take a drink, and I have taken these excerpts out so I can just read. As Prabhupada sat on the Vyasasana singing the Jaya Radha Madhava prayers, he glanced over the packed audience, and it was like the sun gradually peeking out as a cloud moves across it. His glance looked casual, but I felt its warmth. For the split second his glance caught my eye, time stopped, and he looked deep into my soul. He looked so far into the sojourn I'd taken away from Krishna that I immediately felt a long-forgotten connection with Srila Prabhupada. On him seeing me and me seeing him, tears burst up and poured down my face. It was mystical. Nothing like that had ever happened to me before and never did again. And then I'll read from, this is Vegavati. During Guru Puja in the Honolulu temple, I was in the back of the room singing and dancing in the kirtan when I looked at Srila Prabhupada, and his glance came on me and penetrated to my soul in a way that I had not previously experienced. Because he was seeing me as a soul, his glance made me, for the first time, clearly aware of myself as a soul. And since he was also seeing a whole array of petty qualities in my heart, hypocrisies and prejudices, I was thereby able to see those for the first time, and it completely mortified me. And another time I felt Srila Prabhupada's glance on me with my entire being. I was completely enveloped by love, as if I were in the spiritual world. Prabhupada carried that Vrindavan intimacy of souls loving Krishna without prestige or politics or gender tension. And no matter what difficulties come, I cannot forget the relationship Srila Prabhupada introduced me to. My memories are very real and deep. So this is, I'm focusing on ones that talk about the glance of Srila Prabhupada. You see the similar experiences. And now I'm going to read one more from Pranada. It's a little bit long, but it's very deep and very much, yet just profound, you know. Prabhupada slid into the back seat. Something got his attention. At first I didn't realize it was me that caught his eyes. He leaned forward to see me, palms folded together, and looked me in the eyes. It's difficult to explain all that happened in the seconds he looked at me. Words can't sum it up. The thing is, my whole life can't sum it up. When Prabhupada looked at me and I looked back at him, there was no car, no people, no alley. I wasn't in a body. Time didn't exist. He wasn't uncomfortable to stare into my eyes, and this so deeply surprised me, I almost gasped. For the first split second, this rattled me, and I was self-conscious. But this sense melted under Prabhupada's glance and was replaced by thoughts about how I was to respond to his look. My eyes stayed fixed, but I was frantic to make sense of what was transpiring. I'd never had a discussion with eyes, and the longer I looked, the more important it was that I respond. What was it that I needed to say? All of a sudden, it was perfectly clear. I felt Prabhupada was my friend, a long-lost friend. So full and welcoming were his eyes that I thought, surely I am his dear friend, and he's reminding me of our love for each other and our long-time bond. In the next flash, I didn't think this thought. I knew this truth as sure as I was looking at him and he at me. We were profoundly connected. There was no distance between us. Everything had been bridged. His look penetrated whatever it is in the world that keeps souls apart. I knew my eyes lit up because the whole world brightened and I glimpsed eternity in our relationship coming from a long time back and moving forever forward. I saw eternity. For the first time in my life, I was sure, sublimely sure I had made the right decision to stand here, the right decision to join the temple, the right decision to take initiation. My search was over unequivocally. I could rest absolutely sure I belonged with Prabhupada. I was his and he was mine. And this was so forever. I would never leave him. And I said that with my eyes and relaxed into the love of his. So long I had been alone on my journey, so very long. So long I had waited in seeming darkness. Then the entire matter was sealed and I felt emotion pitching inside me. my friend, my friend, my long-lost friend, my master. His smile grew larger, and he gently shook his joined palms in a gesture that said, "Thank you." Then the car began moving, and tears welled in my eyes, and I shuddered involuntarily against the connection that at once demanded everything and gave more than I'd ever imagined. I stood on the spot for a long time. Srila Prabhupada's equanimity, compassion, kindness, and spiritual Shakti are uncommon, even amongst exalted saints. So how could a simple look put me in direct touch with my soul and eternity, and in a flash of a second, and so powerfully that I've been held by it my entire life during my darkest nights, my deepest emotional despair? Prabhupada was infused with the potency of Krishna's Svarup Shakti, and he touched us with it. He changed us with it. Extraordinary and causeless mercy. I beg to be given a spot in eternity in his service. You know, so what's being said here, you know, it exactly corresponds to my own experience, which I explained very similar things in an early lecture towards the beginning. And it's almost inconceivable what could happen in a glance. And you know, another topic that gets repeatedly mentioned in the book, it comes up, is the power of reading Prabhupada's books and the power of distributing his books. So I'm going to read a few of those. So this is Mandakini, this Australian one, not the French one. So she says, in 1974, Melbourne, Rath Yatra, I saw Prabhupada for the first time. I'm a hard-headed realist, but when I was dancing next to Srila Prabhupada, it felt like my feet weren't touching the ground and time stood still. I was in another dimension. His physical presence transported me to some spiritual space, and I was no longer conscious of my body. It was magnificent when Prabhupada stopped walking and with a look of full love turned to the big, beautiful deity of the golden Lord Chaitanya. Then as he turned back to continue, he caught my eye and looked at me deeply for what seemed like an eternity. I was transported and transfixed. That cemented my dedication to his mission, his movement, his instructions, his books, and the chanting of Hare Krishna. Next time in Melbourne, 75, I was impressed with his beautiful, strong character, but he was also gentle, almost like a little boy. And that combination of strength and simplicity attracted me, and I felt that this is the person I've been looking for my whole life. I knew without doubt that I adored and respected Srila Prabhupada, and that I would give the rest of my life for him, that my whole ambition was to follow his instructions. And I'm an avid daily reader of Srila Prabhupada's books, and that reading makes me strong. Srila Prabhupada says he's in his books and his instructions, and through his books, I feel his presence in my heart and in my life, watching and guiding me, talking to me. And here's another devotee. Her name is Rudrani. She said, in January 1975, my parents had me kidnapped. I was held in a hotel room, sent to Nova Scotia, shipped to San Diego, and then to Ohio, where they forced open my mouth and put meat into it. I spit it out. And for 6 months, abductors who blasphemed, shouted, screamed, ripped up books in front of me, broke my beads, and drew horns on Prabhupada's head that shipped me around. And Ted Patrick, the organizer of all of this, warned that he'd sleep in bed with me for a month if I went back to the temple. I was scared, but I took shelter of Krishna and my faith got stronger. I wanted to be with the devotees, and something just kept drawing me back to Prabhupada. So eventually I got back, and I put my heart and soul into book distribution, knowing that it pleased Prabhupada. And I was one of the top book distributors in Toronto. So while I distributed, I prayed to Lord Chaitanya and to Srila Prabhupada all the time. And though I have a responsibility to Srila Prabhupada, for distributing his books, but I wasn't trying to prove anything. I just wanted to serve. And by reading his books, chanting, and serving, my bond with Srila Prabhupada was strong. Krishna consciousness is simple. We serve while following Prabhupada's straightforward, easy-to-follow instructions that work and bring joy. I've had hardships, and many people have tried to break my faith, but in my heart, I always felt, plow right through and go for the essence. I know I'm going on, but I just think these are fabulous. This is from Sadhvi, another devotee. I don't believe I know her. I always felt that Srila Prabhupada really wanted his books distributed, and my service was to assist the book distribution in whatever way I could, because that was the greatest mercy for the whole world. So I took that instruction to my heart, and I always pray that wherever I am, whatever I'm doing, I can always be an instrument for him, for the distribution of his books. Because I did many years of Sankirtan, my relationship with Srila Prabhupada is very much there. Whenever things would be too difficult and the modes of nature were too intense, I would sit down wherever I was and write a letter to Srila Prabhupada. Of course, I never sent the letter. We were discouraged because Srila Prabhupada was so busy, but he answered in many different ways. He always answered. And the next time I opened the book, the answer was there. He answered through devotees, and he gave me the strength to go on and to try to assist him. I also had dreams of Srila Prabhupada when guidance was needed. I was so aware of his protection, very aware of his protection. One time on his disappearance day, I made an offering to him. I said, Srila Prabhupada, I just want to make you smile. And that night I had a dream. Srila Prabhupada was in Los Angeles giving a class, and he came down from the Vyasa-san, and he had many devotees around him, but he turned around and he looked right at me, and he gave me this big, beautiful smile. And I was very happy. Such reciprocation. He's very much here. He's here every day. And here's another one from Shranti. My prayers for strength to do book distribution were the essence of my relationship with Srila Prabhupada. And I never felt a lacking. I never felt, I want to speak to Prabhupada, because I spoke to him constantly. When people were angry and mean, I took shelter of him and of Krishna. Once in the Jacksonville airport, a businessman hit me with his briefcase. All my books went flying and I fell. As I picked up the books, tears were coming, and I prayed intensely, begging for shelter. I don't mind what I have to go through. But if you could send me one person who wants to be Krishna conscious, it will be worth it. So slowly I replaced my books and stood up and approached another businessman. And as he took a Bhagavad Gita, his eyes welled with tears, and he said, I have been looking everywhere for this. And he bought one of every book that I had. So Prabhupada had responded to my insignificant prayer. Book distribution wasn't natural for me, but I knew Prabhupada loved it. So I was 10% sold out to distribute his books, whatever the weather and however I was feeling. Amazing devotees. And there were also many expressions of how Srila Prabhupada, could bring us to another platform, how he would pull us out of the bodily concept of life, out of our false ego. And, how these were very significant experiences. This is from Govardhan Dasi, such a fabulous devotee, talented. It would be nice to tell about all these women, but it would take me days to finish this class. So Srila Prabhupada brought transcendental spiritual potency with him that took us out of our bodily concept of life, that swept us off the mental platform, and that made us remember that we're eternal servants of Krishna. I'm no one special, but you don't have to be anyone special. You don't have to have seen Prabhupada or to have been initiated by him. If you love Prabhupada, he loves you. I felt his love, and I feel it ongoing. He makes me feel protected and comforted like a girl with her father. When a person appreciates Prabhupada, even momentarily, that stands in eternity and forges a link of love that won't go away. My experience of Prabhupada's love and acceptance didn't come from those few times I was in his personal presence, because in those days I was an extremely shy and spaced out girl. But those feelings that I've got now, they've come since then. They've come in Prabhupada's absence, and it grows with time. And just maybe one or two more. Because there are, as I said, there are clear explanations of what, all of these are explanations, but specifically what made these ladies stay in the movement. And so this is Sukada, another amazing devotee. I am unqualified to see Krishna. The only way it will happen is that when I'm ready, Srila Prabhupada will bring me to Krishna. Srila Prabhupada is my connection, and I like it. That's how it should be, because I would never know anything if it wasn't for him. So I have no complaints about anything. Whatever mercy or benefit I've received from his institution, ISKCON, so far outweighs any injustices done to me or mistakes made that, I can overlook those injustices and mistakes and just move on. I know we're correcting ourselves and we're getting better and going forward. And this is from Ruchira. When I first joined, I thought, I want to try this and see. Then after practicing and seeing the results, that's what has made me stay. The proof is in the taste of the pudding. By getting in there and practicing, not just on the surface, but actually diving into your japa, your sadhana, your service, your reading of Prabhupada's books, that's what's kept me going the whole time. I can see I'm making some advancement. I can see material desires and attachments dropping off. And I can see Krishna's a real person and that he's always there. I can see that Srila Prabhupada is always there, even when physically he's not. But he is definitely still there to help me along the path. And finally, I think I better stop. Sudharma, who left us just last year, I believe, a very dear friend who did astounding service for Srila Prabhupada. She said, I almost had no association with Srila Prabhupada. My connection has always been through the devotees, books, and service. Srila Prabhupada told us everything was in his books, and I believe him. The more I practice devotional service, the more genuine and valid the process has been for me. And the more this very real process connects with every fiber of my being, the more I realize how important, deep, and genuine this process is. I want to have every drop of it I can have, and to share it, no matter how much I have to struggle with everyday existence. The more service you give, the more your heart softens. A soft heart lets you stay in devotional life continually. Despite the many ups and downs life throws your way. A soft heart lets you stay in devotional service, devotional life continually, despite the many ups and downs life throws your way. So, these are not to be dismissed as just some sentimental expressions. It is testimony to the efficacy, is that how you say it, of the process of Krishna consciousness. That, this wide variety of women of all ages and nationalities have applied themselves to the process and had similar results. They all formed a bond of love so profound that it carried them throughout their entire lives. So what they received from Srila Prabhupada and from following their spiritual practices was so deeply enriching that it far outweighed any difficulties or even abuses they had to face. So it is practical evidence that what we read in Shastra can be directly perceived and experienced, and that following the instructions of the spiritual master and acting in devotional service can lift one out of the bodily conception of life onto the transcendental platform, beyond the miseries and perplexities and prejudices of mundane life. Looking back, over the years, perhaps it was advantageous to be in a woman's body. Over the years, we, ladies, we've watched many of our god brothers, rise and fall, often due to accepting honor or prestige or service beyond the capacity of their actual spiritual growth. Pratishta, it is a very dangerous thing. And so I think in some ways women were a bit protected from that, and that is Krishna's, we can see it as Krishna's kindness that when he keeps us in a humble position. And I mean, of course, although many of these women were able to be transcendental and make advancement despite any conditions, that doesn't diminish the fact that we need to treat each other better and to guard against misapplication or the twisting of the philosophy in ways that harm individuals and the society. because, especially in today's world, excuse me, I need some water. In today's world, there's just endless discussion about women and gender issues, and women want and expect to be heard. It's not just some feminist idea. It arises from the fact that in most cultures around the world, for generations upon generations, the female story and the female contribution has often taken a back seat, or just not be recognized at all. But now, like it or not, the female narrative is taking center stage. So it's good we're hearing these stories of the female devotee ladies, because now it's expected that the contributions of women, they should be known and they should be heard and they should even be highlighted. It's just where society has come to now, and we need to deal with it. Today people, especially the younger generation, they're very interested in these topics. I was listening to a lecture of Radhika Raman. He's a renowned devotee scholar who teaches religious studies, and he said that whenever he introduces a different religious tradition in his classroom, the first thing the students want to know is, how do they treat their women? What's their view on women? And how do they treat the environment? So this is of primary importance to young people in the world today, and probably more so in the future. So it's something we have to face if we want to be relevant. And by that, I don't mean that we should accept whatever narratives or agendas the modern world is promoting. I mean, how do we help them? How do we help people? Just as Srila Prabhupada did in our early days. My generation was seeking peace and love, and how to stay high forever. It's not a bad idea. It's a good idea. It's a nice goal. But, it was just ridiculous and disastrous how we were trying to achieve it. So Srila Prabhupada didn't say, well, you're stupid, He clearly explained, and he showed us by his example how we could have peace and love and even stay high forever. So in the same way, people today, they have their concerns, they want equality. It's a nice idea. There's nothing wrong with it. But we see, it's not really happening practically. And in their ignorance, they are also doing ridiculous and going to, ridiculous and dangerous lengths to reach a goal that is unattainable without a change in consciousness and vision. So, we need to be able to address the concerns of the people in the same way as Srila Prabhupada did for us. And we do have significant points to bring forward. We do have something, to enter into that dialogue. We do understand the need or the desire for equality, and how that is actually only possible on the spiritual platform. Unfortunately, in our devotee circles, we also have this endless conflict on these same topics. I mean, maybe we have to save ourselves before we can save others. But at least we all theoretically agree that the basic, essential, foundational premise of our philosophy is that we are not these bodies, but eternal spirit souls with unlimited potential and beauty. And that this is the platform of equality. And and this answers so many questions and is the answer to so many problems. But demonstrating that philosophy, living that experience, well, we do often come up very short. It's not surprising, because most religious or spiritual communities, and we're no exception, are, comprised of an abundance of kanista adhikaris. It means, aspiring devotees that are just not very realized. So there really is no use in pointing fingers or being angry or calling out others who we think are not behaving according to philosophy. The problem lies within us all. Honest acceptance is the first step. Many of us, I'm speaking, of course, there are many devotees that are highly realized, but many of us are just not advanced enough. We have a lot of gyan, but not enough vigyan. And the only real solution is for each of us to try harder to rise beyond the kanista platform, where our consciousness is always mixed with mundane vision and desires. That we really try to push beyond that small-minded consciousness and make genuine advancement in Krishna consciousness. Like Srila Prabhupada, he used to say there's no lack of anything except Krishna consciousness. I remember thinking I heard that, I thought it sounded a little simplistic, but it's not, it's the fact. Everything becomes resolved through advancement. Prabhupada just walk into a room and changes the consciousness of people. But, anyway, personally, I know that I have not arrived there, but I do have faith that if we continue to follow the process, Krishna will bless us with greater vision if that is our intense desire. That is the only solution. We can talk about it, we can write policy, we can make rules, we can adjust the society in different ways, but, it's never gonna be really effective until we actually see differently. When enough of us actually see the soul, when we actually see the super soul, automatically there will be love and respect for each other. And people will feel that, and they will be attracted. And if we don't learn to walk our talk better, it's, likely people just won't be attracted to our movement. And, we will diminish or just become another mundane religious organization. Anyway, I guess I got a little sidetracked, and I've gone on for quite a while on only a couple of points. I'm not getting through these last few years so quickly, but anyway, it doesn't matter. But, the point I started out to make is that to be relevant, we need to be at least informed. And I think that, reading these two books, which document the history of women in ISKCON, it would be a very good way to begin to enhance that exploration, to gain more understanding and appreciation. And so I think I will end here. Thank you. I did a lot of reading on this one, but I think it was a nice read. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.